I wish I never discovered what my neighbor was hiding. I never really paid attention to my neighbors. Life in a small town is quiet, and you tend to keep to yourself. But when a new neighbor moved in next door, things started to change. His name was Peter, and he seemed like an average guy, late 30s, a bit reserved, but friendly enough. I remember the first time I met him. It was a chilly evening, and I was walking back home from the store when I saw him unloading boxes from a truck. "Need a hand?" I asked casually. He smiled, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm good, thanks," he replied, his voice a little too soft. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. Most people around here are pretty open, but Peter, there was something about him that made me feel uneasy. A few weeks passed, and I didn't think much of it. Peter kept to himself, rarely seen outside unless he was taking out trash or picking up mail. But then, one evening, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was late around midnight. I was just about to fall asleep when I heard strange noises coming from next door. At first, I thought it was just the window something, but then the sounds grew louder. It was like furniture being thrown around, or maybe someone was being dragged across the floor. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should get involved. But curiosity won, and I decided to go next door and knock on his door. When I did, there was no answer. The house was dark, and the noises had stopped. I was about to turn back when I noticed something strange. There was a faint glow coming from the basement window. I don't know why I did it, but I couldn't help myself. I went around the back, peered through the basement window, and what I saw sent a chill down my spine. There was Peter, sitting in the middle of the room, surrounded by old furniture and strange, unsettling symbols drawn on the floor. Before I could make sense of what I was seeing, the light flickered, and I quickly stepped back, hiding in the shadows. My heart was racing, and my mind was spinning. What the hell was going on next door? I couldn't shake the image of Peter sitting there in that basement, surrounded by those eerie symbols. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see him staring into nothingness, completely detached from reality. Something was off about him, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The next few days were filled with a strange unease. I tried to go on with my routine, but every time I looked toward Peter's house, my stomach would churn. I wanted to know more, but I was terrified of what I might uncover. One evening, I saw Peter leave his house, carrying a large bag. I don't know why, but something inside me told me this was my chance. I waited for him to drive away, and then I took the opportunity to slip into his house. The door was unlocked, just like the last time I'd knocked. I slipped inside, heart pounding in my chest. The air inside was thick with dust, and the house was eerily quiet. I moved through the rooms cautiously, afraid of making any noise. As I passed the living room, something caught my eye. There, on the coffee table, was a strange, old book. It looked ancient, its cover cracked and faded. I picked it up, and as soon as my fingers touched it, a shiver ran down my spine. The book was heavy, and as I flipped through the pages, I saw drawings, horrifying images of people tied up, trapped in strange rituals. I froze. The symbols from the basement, they were in the book too. Each page was filled with twisted diagrams, symbols that I had seen scrawled on the basement floor. My mind was racing. What was Peter involved in? What kind of dark magic was this? Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't just the book, it was the entire house. I could feel the weight of something ancient, something dark, pressing in on me. I didn't know how much time I had left. I quickly shoved the book into my bag and ran back out, my heart racing with every step. As I stood outside, trying to calm myself, I knew one thing for sure. I had just stumbled upon something far darker than I ever could have imagined. And now, there was no turning back. The next few days felt like a blur. Every moment was filled with dread, and I couldn't stop thinking about what I had found in Peter's house. The book was still in my bag, hidden away, but it haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even though I never saw anyone. One evening, just as I was about to lock up and go to bed, I heard the same noise again coming from Peter's house. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just furniture being moved or strange sounds. It was chanting. Low, guttural chanting, like a prayer, but not in any language I recognized. I felt paralyzed. I stood in my living room, frozen, listening intently. The chanting grew louder, and then I heard a door slam shut. It was as if Peter was trying to block out the noise, but he couldn't. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see what was happening. I grabbed the book from my bag, heart pounding, and made my way to his house again. This time, I was determined to find out everything. When I reached the house, the basement window was glowing once more, but there was something else to smell. It was a foul, rotting odor, like something dead had been left in the dark for too long. I couldn't stand it any longer. I went to the back and crouched by the basement window, trying to get a glimpse of what was happening inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. Peter was there, standing in the center of the room. His eyes were wide and empty, his face pale as death. Around him, people were gathered, faces I didn't recognize, all of them chanting, their voices blending into a single, unnatural sound. But it wasn't just a ritual, it was a sacrifice. I watched in horror as one of the figures, a man who looked barely conscious, was led to the center. Peter raised his hand and the chanting grew louder, more intense. In a swift motion, Peter grabbed the man by the throat, pulling him to the ground. The others in the room gathered around, their hands raised in the air as they recited something in unison. I wanted to scream, but my body wouldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to tear my eyes away from the nightmare unfolding in front of me. Then, just as quickly as it began, it stopped. The room fell silent. Peter stood over the man's lifeless body, staring at it with a blank expression. The others slowly turned and left, disappearing into the shadows of the basement. I was shaking uncontrollably. What had I just witnessed? I had no words, no explanation. I backed away from the window, my mind racing with questions, but there was one thought that kept repeating over and over. I had to stop him. I had to do something. Because if I didn't, I knew I would be next. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind was too full of what I had just witnessed. The sacrifice, the chanting, the dark, twisted ritual was too much. I knew I couldn't just let it go. But I also knew that confronting Peter directly was dangerous. He wasn't just some quiet neighbor anymore. He was involved in something far darker, something I didn't understand. I tried to tell myself that maybe it was a bad dream, that I had misunderstood. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no denying what I saw, and there was no escaping the fact that Peter had to be stopped. The next evening, I watched him from my window, pacing around his yard, his movements erratic, like he was waiting for something or someone. That's when I realized I had no choice. I had to confront him. The book was still in my bag, and I had no idea what was in it, but I was sure it held the answers. So, with trembling hands, I left my house and walked toward his. My feet felt heavy, my heart pounding in my chest. The streetlights flickered as I approached his front door, and I knew this was the moment. I knocked and the door creaked open. Peter was standing there, his eyes dark, like he hadn't slept in days. His face was unreadable, his lips curled into a tight smile. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth but cold. I didn't know what to say. The words stuck in my throat. But finally, I blurted out, "I know what you've been doing. I saw what happened in your basement." His smile faltered for a split second, but it was enough to confirm what I already knew. He was hiding something, and I was getting too close to the truth. "You shouldn't have seen that," Peter said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening tone. "But now that you have, I can't let you walk away." Before I could react, he slammed the door shut, locking it behind him. I heard footsteps moving away from the door, heavy and deliberate. I didn't waste a second. I pulled out the book from my bag, desperate to find anything that could help me understand what was going on. The pages were filled with more symbols, more dark rituals. But one page stood out, an incantation, something I could barely comprehend. It was in Latin, and beneath it, there was a drawing that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of a person, tied up, surrounded by those same symbols I had seen in the basement. And in the center, there was a figure, Peter. He had been leading these rituals for a long time. And the worst part? The ritual was far from over. It had only just begun, and I was in way too deep. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, soft footsteps, getting closer. My heart stopped as I turned around. Peter was standing there, blocking the doorway, a dark grin spreading across his face. "I'm afraid it's too late for you," he whispered. "You're already part of the ritual now." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath shallow and panicked. Peter stood in the doorway, his face twisted with a sinister grin. There was no escape now. He knew I knew too much. "You're not leaving," Peter said, his voice eerily calm, as though he had already accepted what was about to happen. The book I had stolen from his house felt heavy in my hands, but it was all I had left. I glanced at the page I had been studying, the incantation, the drawing, the symbols. There had to be something I could do to stop him, to stop whatever dark force he was controlling. "You're not in control anymore," I said, my voice shaking, trying to muster some courage. "I won't let you do this. I'll expose you." Peter's smile widened, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "You think it's that simple? You think you can stop me? The ritual has already started. You're too far gone now." I tried to back away, but the air around me seemed to thicken, pressing against my chest. I couldn't breathe. It felt like an invisible force was holding me in place. Peter was advancing toward me, each step bringing him closer to finishing what he started. The room seemed to warp, as though the walls were closing in. His words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of my helplessness. You're already part of the ritual. It was true. I had been in his house, witnessed everything, taken the book. He had planned for this all along. In a desperate attempt, I raised the book, hoping that there was some power in it that could stop him. "Please," I whispered, as if the book could somehow hear me. "Tell me how to end this." Peter's grin faltered for the briefest of moments, and for the first time, I saw a hint of fear in his eyes. It was as if he hadn't expected me to fight back, as if he thought I would simply give in. "You don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "You don't have the power to stop what's coming. None of us do." I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of strength left in me. I didn't have all the answers, but I had something stronger than fear. I didn't need to understand the ritual to fight back. I just needed to survive. I made a split-second decision. I threw the book at him, the pages fluttering as it flew through the air. As it made contact, there was an explosion of light, a blinding, searing white light that filled the entire room. I couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't move. It was as if the world itself had stopped. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, Peter was gone. The house was still. The strange pressure I had felt moments before was lifted, and I found myself standing alone in the empty room. The book lay on the floor, its pages now blank, the symbols erased as if they had never existed. I didn't know if what had happened was real, or if I had simply imagined it all in a panic. But I did know one thing for certain: Peter was gone. And whatever dark ritual he had been planning, it was over. I never saw him again. And I moved away from that house, leaving the town behind. But the memories of the night, of the darkness that Peter had tried to unleash, stayed with me. I would never forget what I had seen or what I had narrowly escaped. Some secrets, once uncovered, are better left buried. And some neighbors are better left alone.